What was the worst case scenario for the 1000-Year Blood War? A fate so tragic that only a select few know of it in the Bleach verse. To fully understand this, let's go back to the 1000-Year Blood War. During the 1000-Year Blood War, the Soul King was absorbed and disposed of by Yhwach and Ichigo. In my last video, I mentioned how Yhwach's remnants after his death were used as the next Soul King. But what would happen if Yhwach's leftovers were not able to function as the Soul King? What about if the Soul King's powers were not absorbed and he was just outright killed? If that was the case, a Soul King candidate would be forced to become the new Soul King. Naturally, Squad Zero would have developed contingency plans for something as prominent as the linchpin of the world. If the current Soul King could no longer function, they would imprison the most suitable candidate for all of eternity. So what are the requirements of the Soul King and who are the main candidates? Although the requirements weren't directly stated, you can assume that one of the requirements are that you need to be a hybrid Soul Reaper, Quincy, and Fullbringer, since all the candidates are hybrids. Now, who are the main candidates? What makes all of this so dark is that the number one candidate is, you guessed it, Mr. Number One himself, the main character, Ichigo Kurosaki. Ichigo saved the world countless times, but if something were to go wrong with the Soul King, he would have to save the world once again in a very unsettling way. Ichigo would be the one forced into eternal servitude to stabilize the realms. In Can't Fear Your Own World, it was revealed that the soul tickets that Shunsui was going to give to Ichigo's friends were under the worst case scenario that Ichigo does become the Soul King. Imagine that, the hero of this world, forced to become a sacrifice by the very people he saved, even after allying with the Soul Reapers and furthering their cause like no one else before. In return, they will force a life of enslavement onto him. Despite the eternal suffering that would come with the position, if it meant protecting the ones he loved, Ichigo would go through with it. That's just the man he is. The crazy part of all of this is that it was sort of prophesized. The original Soul King was imprisoned by the 5 noble clans, and one of the clan members outright rejected the imprisonment of the Soul King. While the other clan members went through with the decision, that one clan ancestor would go on to regret this very plan so much that the ancestor would propose to swap places with the Soul King if he could. Regardless if the ancestor switched or not, it was likely that the ancestor was not capable of becoming the Soul King, since they were not a hybrid like Ichigo and the other candidates. This clan ancestor was from the Shiba clan, and Ichigo Kurosaki is a descendant from that very clan. Ichibei, the leader of Zero Squad, will imply that it was the will of the Shiba ancestor that brought Ichigo this far. But thankfully, Ichigo's imprisonment did not come to pass. Yet, all this makes you wonder, what does the future hold for Ichigo Kurosaki? Maybe he will end up sacrificing his life for an eternity for the betterment of the world. Just like the Soul King, and just like his Shiba ancestors wished they could. Could this be Ichigo's final fate? To fulfill the legacy of the Shiba clan? To relieve the Soul King of his duty? In the 1000-Year Blood War, Ichigo finished off the Soul King. At the time, it seemed like Yhwach took control of Ichigo, perhaps through his Quincy blood or Zangetsu, forcing him to slice the Soul King. But after hearing all of this, could it have been his Shiba blood that did it? Could it have been the longing of the Shiba clan to free the Soul King from his eternal slumber? Yhwach taking control of Ichigo is more likely, but it would have been a cool twist if it was his Shiba lineage that made him do it. Earlier in this video, I mentioned Ichigo was the number one candidate for the Soul King, but he is not the only candidate. With all that said, who are the other Soul King candidates? There were 3 Soul King candidates stated in Can't Fear Your Own World: Ichigo, Ginjo, and Hikone. I will talk about Ginjo and Hikone in due time, but there is perhaps another candidate that may prove to be troublesome. The name of this character is Kazui Kurosaki, son of Ichigo Kurosaki. Kazui could be a hybrid as well, since Ichigo was one. He was not born during the events of Can't Fear Your Own World, so he was not mentioned in the same ranks as the other candidates. But if you base the criteria of being a candidate on the hybrid status, Kazui could very well be a Soul King candidate in the future if he inherits Ichigo's powers. Now, what does this mean for the future of Bleach? If Kazui was taken from Ichigo and was set to be the next Soul King, that would be the spark needed to start a rebellion. Ichigo would tear the very foundations of the Soul Society, and his vast amount of allies would come to aid him. Ichigo may finally come to agree with all of his old enemies. This could be a start of a civil war, but I don't think it is very likely Kubo will go down this route, as it is pretty dark and unsettling. a war/invasion/rescue arc in hell may be more likely, but best believe this boy will have a massive part to play. Perhaps his lineage will get him abducted by those in hell for similar reasons. Now, what if Ichigo became the Soul King? What would happen to Kazui? The first question that comes to mind is, would Kazui become like Yhwach? First off, Ichigo may very well choose to become the Soul King voluntarily. If that was the case, I don't think Kazui would resent the Soul Reapers. Ichigo's friends and family would be there for him, to tell of the tales of how he saved the world countless times. He would grow up admiring his father. However, if Ichigo was forced to become the Soul King, that would be a different story. That could very well split the Soul Society, and we know Ichigo's close friends will fight till the bitter end. Say if they were to lose, which I don't think is likely, Kazui could definitely become like Yhwach. Kazui had an interesting moment at the end of Bleach with the remnants of Yhwach's powers. It was never confirmed what actually happened from what I know, but many theorize that Kazui absorbed the leftovers of Yhwach's powers, meaning that Yhwach's powers are alive through Kazui Kurosaki. This could mean that Kazui could be just like Yhwach through both his powers, as well as the conquest to save his father/oppose the Soul Reapers. The cycle of violence and vengeance may never truly end if this comes to be. If Ichigo becomes the Soul King, Kazui would grow up without a father. Ichigo's friends and family, if they are still around, will do whatever they could to raise the boy. Imagine if Kon was somehow able to retain a form that looked like Ichigo. To repay Ichigo back for all those times together, he would probably raise his son, take care of his family, as Kon was around for many of Ichigo's most telling of moments. It would be very noble of him to do that. Wait a minute, if you were to replace Ichigo, that would mean he'd be married to Orihime. God damn it, Kon, you sneaky... I see what you're doing. If that happened, Ichigo would probably break out of his Soul King shackles, no matter how strong it was, and beat Kon's ass just like old times. We can always resort to that if Ichigo does become the Soul King. Another funny thought is that some fans think that they shaved the Soul King's eyebrows. Like, how dangerous was this man that you had to shave his eyebrows off? I feel at that point it was just personal. It's like he had an affair with the wife or a husband of a noble or something.
Shut up.
Did they take him off? I don't know, but in my headcanon they did out of pettiness. It would be funny if someone out there inherited his eyebrows, and now they have unimaginable power. That or everyone is attracted to them. Who do you think would have inherited the Soul King's eyebrows? I'd say Ichigo's friend, this guy. Wait, wrong one. Not Kaigo, but Mizuru, since he was with someone new every time they showed him. Jokes aside, there are still many mysteries regarding the Soul King's body parts, and so I will discuss some of the questions I have of him. In the Thousand Year Blood War, it was revealed that his parts were inherited by a few characters, with Ukitake inheriting the right hand, Pernida inheriting the left hand, and Gerard inheriting the heart. In Camp Fury's own world, we were introduced to a character who inherited the binding chain, or Saketsu, Aura Michibane. More on Aura in later videos. This brings into question, how many other parts of the Soul King are out there? Just based on his appearance, you can assume that the legs of the Soul King could also be inherited. What other parts do you think are out there? If there truly are more parts of the Soul King, like his legs, it brings up the question on what powers would his left and right legs have. I'm honestly not too sure and would love to hear your thoughts. It also brings up the question of who inherited his legs. I would like to think that his legs were inherited by some beings in hell, since it was the lowest part of his body, and hell is usually signified as the lowest place in the world. Also, we have yet to see the beings in hell, so it would make sense. I don't believe the Bleach world is set in a linear world of heaven, world of the living, and hell at the bottom, as it has many realms, but regardless of that, it's just a theory. Another question that comes to mind is, how were the Soul King parts inherited? I believe Mimihagi came to Ukitake, and so perhaps the other parts took material forms and found their inheritors themselves. Maybe the Soul King parts were divided among the different races to bring upon balance of some sort, as he must have held massive spiritual powers. Perhaps that is what allowed the world to be split into different realms, by separating his body parts throughout them. Also, if the Soul King truly hated the Soul Reapers, I wouldn't see his body parts going to one. I would have thought that the nobles would have kept his parts for themselves, but it seemed like they had a mind of their own. I brought up a bunch of questions, but I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Anyways, back to the topic on hand of Ichigo. Ichigo undoubtedly has more allies than enemies, even if he goes against the Soul Society. If he has all of these allies, could he really be beaten? I feel most of the big players in the Soul Society may choose to ally with Ichigo if he was to fight back, but I could be wrong. Rukia will never let Ichigo be imprisoned, and she would come to rescue Ichigo just like he did with Rukia in the Soul Society arc. Renji would follow suit as one of Ichigo's most trusted allies, and I'm sure Byakuya will do whatever he could to prevent Ichigo from assuming such a fate. Kenny wouldn't give a shit about the Soul King dilemma, but if Ichigo was the Soul King, Kenny would never get to spar with Ichigo ever again, so I'm sure he'd ally with Ichigo. Plus, having a chaotic world with all the species mixed and hollows everywhere would be a dream for a madman like Kenpachi. I'd like to think he'd enjoy that more. I also feel Toshiro wouldn't turn his back on Ichigo. I feel the former Visors would also ally with Ichigo. Just based on those characters, a good bulk of the Soul Society's power is allied with him. Let's not forget Ichigo's powerful allies in Karakura Town, who would fight to the bitter end if need be. Funny enough, Ichigo's past enemies will probably be the first to come to his aid if he was forced to become the Soul King. Dreamjo, who would probably be similar to Kenpachi in wanting to spar Ichigo. Ginjo, who will get his own video soon enough. The former Espada and Arrancars, the Fullbringers, would all come to Ichigo's aid compared to the Soul Societies. And perhaps his greatest ally for this time would be the notorious Sosuke Aizen, who also will get his own video soon. Now back to the question, could Ichigo be beaten and forced to become the Soul King? I believe so. So what is the only way I see Ichigo and his allies losing? His main enemies could possibly be Zero Squad, but I don't see them personally defeating Ichigo. If I'm being honest, the only way I see Ichigo losing is through treachery. Kubo mentioned early on how he wanted to have a character who was helping Ichigo from the start. He wanted to have that person turn out to be the villain at the end. Yhwach turned out to be that very character, but early on, that character arc was reserved for a man named Kisuke Urahara. If Kubo chooses to revive the deceptive nature he intended Urahara to have, I believe he would be the only one able to silence Ichigo. Despite being one of the most beloved characters in Bleach, Urahara is still morally grey. That said, I don't think this will happen since we have already went through this route in the Thousand Year Blood War, but after reading Can't Fear Your Own World, my mind was changed a bit. Can't Fear Your Own World revealed a more villainous side to him, and I feel that video may change your mind as well. I'll be covering Kisuke and a bunch of other characters in future videos, and these videos are set to be my biggest yet. Hit subscribe to stay up to date. I'll see you then.